Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning. Welcome to CAMP. Welcome to another edition of Urban Talks, and welcome to 2026. So this is the first Urban Talks that we have this year, and maybe it's even the first lecture of this kind, so welcome back to CAMP. We are about to open new exhibition next week, so now we are in the middle of exhibitions between them, and after Christmas we are starting with our program with this event, with landscape architecture. Today we will talk about urban landscapes, landscape architecture, and something in between. We will talk with Mette Skjold, CEO of SLA Architects from Denmark. So we will have a chance to see some, I can say, very famous examples of landscape architecture interpreted in urban environment, and we will see a backstage of projects that you have seen on websites and that were trending all around the social media, because they were really nice examples how to do it right now, how to do it in a meaning of modern interpretation of urban landscapes, how to create cities that are more ready for climate changes, they are more ready for being better environment for our kids, for us, and we will have a chance to ask Mette some questions. So if you will be interested to do it, you will have a chance, you can raise your hand and we will bring you a microphone after that. And if you are watching the stream, welcome to Camp 2, and you can ask questions via Slido. If you will use app slido.com, you can enter the hashtag Urban Talks, and you will be able to ask questions. I will see them here on my tablet, and I will be able to ask Mette about things that you are interested in. I will just mention that Mette Skjold is CEO and senior partner in SLA, which is, as I mentioned, renowned Danish nature-based design studio. And I would like to say that she entered SLA in 2010, and in 2011 she became a CEO. And what happened next, she will tell us in her lecture. So welcome here, welcome to Camp, Mette. It's great to see you here. And I would like to gladly give you the floor.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for a nice introduction. I will not go through everything I did for the past 15 years, but I'll take you through some of our recent projects. In SLA, our core purpose in everything we do is to design places for life. And we have the extra all life, because it's with living matter that we are working. And all life includes both humans, but also flora and fauna. And here you see like a narrow zoom in on some of our projects where we collect data, we monitor our projects, we work mainly in the urban environment. And the purpose beyond creating space for life is to connect people with the value proposition and the wonders of nature. So first I'll take you with SLA to a camp. We did a camp a couple of years ago in a former granite quarry where they do like gravels of granite in Sweden, in the woods. We were the first to re-enter this site. It had been left for 50 years, so 50 years, no persons here on the site. And we camped there for 2 days under the title Another Green World, where we debated, we talked what is kind of the next phase for SLA, our common good, and how we practice. We also do intermediate projects in the city of Oslo, where we have a studio. And this slide is actually one of our biologists who is telling people, it's an event called Bats and Bonfire. How do you actually do biodiversity survey in the field, so on site? So that's what we do. Ask questions, what is your response to wind, sort of interact with nature That's what we do in the studio. Our sort of nurturing our collective power and our collective efforts to future ventures of SLA. We do a lot of models. One of the constraints we did 2025 is to do a poison and toxic-free model workshop, which is not that easy. And I would say that some of our models, our initial models from doing this constraint, had like, you know, a little bit World of Warcraft expression. So we're still working on it, but that's a way of sort of taking the medicine of our own purpose. We also have a huge library, and the person you see here is the founder, Stig L. Andersen. We collect sand from where we work. Sand is a raw material of many things that we all do in everyday life. And we have mainly literature on philosophy, culture, different types of aspirations that we take into our design. And then we work interdisciplinary. We have around 20 nationalities. I'm just gonna, because this big screen, I never tried that before. We have 3 studios, one in Oslo, one in Copenhagen, one in Aarhus. We are 130 people. We've been in the business for 30 years. And I think we have around 1,500 projects in the bag. But our clients, we explore this type of nature with our clients, and this is from one of our projects where we take a client, it's a biologist who finds this water pineapple. And the project leader and the head from the client side, it's a water plant, and this water plant is a prerequisite for finding these types of dragonflies. It's a green mosaic dragonfly, so if you want these dragonflies to be close to home, then you need to have the water pineapple. It's kind of intersected. It's a system. Our services is quite a wide span, but where we have our main focus is in the design and in the implementation. That's where we gather information for, but we also do a lot of maintenance design. We also do planning, landscape-led planning, and even strategies where we, for a big, that's an example, a big capital fund, make a nature-positive real estate portfolio for the future. And they put that into their annual report. So that's the type of projects that we do strategic-wise. We work in 5 key markets, and this is not to be bragging about it, but it's just to let you know that I will go through 5 projects from Copenhagen that differ very much. Then I will take you to a planning project in the UK, and then further on to UAE and Canada. So stay put. and the projects, not to spoil anything, is kind of where the end user and the client are ready to take as much nature into the equation of the design. So that's really what we always look for. Where can we get that? Where can we push the limits? Where can we do it differently than we did before? So first of all, it's a transformation. It's a competition we won for the city of Copenhagen, a roundabout and a normal housing street in a neighborhood, a climate adaptation neighborhood, a climate district. It was kind of a theme of this neighborhood, and we won the competition for the roundabout and the street. And this is a view from before, and this is a view on a nice sunny day from the same view. So what we did is that we actually, changed the urban fabric, but we still had the same design legend according to traffic. So the roundabout still has the same turning radius for bigger cars, for buses, etc. But we took away a lot of the paved. 2/3 of the paved were taken away from this site, and we added in a lot of green. So the idea is also very basic. Instead of having, like we did for decades, maybe even centuries, having the section of infrastructure convex in order to get the water away from the street and the infrastructure, and then traffic can pass, we did it concave. And then allowing the resiliency, the mitigation of water, allowing that for these ecosystem services to thrive. The plants here are all native, but you could also say that the biotopes, so that's like a system of plants that support each other and a certain fauna, is analyzed from nearby nature parks in the area. So you get like an infrastructure that is almost like a stepping stone. Nature and water is always, flows. You cannot contain it. It's like flows. It's like people. So this is year one. Welcome to the jungle. We try to say that, but this is in the middle of the roundabout. As I said, the program and the capacity for traffic is still the same. And then I ask a question to the audience. Does any of you see a bird? You may raise your hand if you see a bird. Oh, wow. Yeah, good. These ones are, you're all alive. It's a Eurasian blue tit. It's a common bird, but it's a signature on that the ecosystems is thriving because it likes older trees where it can make nest. It likes spiders, that type of. So it's a signature on an ecosystem that is thriving in the center of this road. And of course, it's also applies during winter, and this is like a recent set of images from late autumn, where we even found this little squirrel, a native red squirrel, finding food here. The increase in property value has risen in the area, and of course, increased property tax goes as well. Trees and shrubs are projected to absorb 4 tons of CO2 annually, and these types of data kind of promotes what we do. So we are also data collectors, you could say, on what we do. We are not only designers. Yeah, and of course rainwater. We planted 600 trees. 586 trees, native trees, and our biologist team and plant specialists, they monitor how biodiversity, so the quality and the amount of species that is finding habitat in this roundabout and this street. And it doubled in a year. So we know what we plant, but we cannot, put the hand on the Bible and say, and then there will be butterflies. But we can definitely monitor and then cherish and have the information going. Another project, a roof garden that we did, we are less famous than the architect doing this, Copenhagen, but we love them, no doubt. It's like standing near to a sun, it shines on you as well. I hope Bjarke hears this. But anyways, we did the natural hike. We never tried to do on this waste to energy plant, Copenhagen. We never tried to plant these big trees. So that's where we go in collaboration with the contractor. And we actually invent as we go. And going uphill, you're embraced. It's a hike. Denmark is a very flat land. This is a hike going uphill from 0 to around 85, 86 meters, getting a nice view. And the plant design here was actually to disperse. So the seeds would disperse in this dark industrial harbor. But our biologist also did some field studies here, and even on site there was like a fox, there was like birds taking nest. And this kind of information sort of, limits the distance between people and nature. And here you see it from the top, accessible 24/7. to go uphill. Another roof garden that we did, it took a year. It's actually the largest dormitory of Scandinavia, 1,300 dorms, student houses. It's a part of this building area. And I would say that the before image, if my children were about to live here and that space nudges, like, you know, to smoke or something that is not nice. But this private philanthropic foundation paid a quite small sum of money, so this is a very quick, a rapid prototype of a change. Only native species. We even regenerated some of the trees on ground and took it, so we recycled trees that always contain some kind of risk. Are the roots matured? Can it actually thrive and grow on this deck? But so far it does. And this philanthropic foundation, once a year they go on study trip to see what came out of the money. And one of the board, a very nice lady, they're super nice, she said, "Oh, this reminds me about the High Line. I was there a week ago." I was just like, okay, lady, thank you for the aspiration. But High Line is kind of the highest cost per square meter maintenance-wise. I love the High Line, but it's also some of the highest cost per square meter, like in a project. But this is like in another level and much more local, and you only have to maintain it once a year. Another project is a social housing area where there's common lawn, there's a school. We won the opportunity to do this project, and this is like a project where we do as little design needed, as little as possible, but as much needed to meet the standards. Here, the program was to contain water, to slow down, to remediate water in the system of the city. So basically, we changed the terrain. And this picture the first picture is when we inaugurated. It's a year and a half ago, and 5 days after, there was like a huge cloud burst or a heavy rain event. And that's always, you know, a little bit risky. When you just did the planting, you just have, you know, everything fixed, and then rain comes. But it survived so far. And here you see it from the other side to the church, a very famous church, Grundtvigskirken. On a dusk moment, late autumn, a nice sunny day, and then winter. And a funny story about this project is that our communication PR people in the studio, they send in sometimes they just send into ARC Daily. And when ARC Daily was given this project, they said, they rejected it. They said, it's too little design. We cannot show this on our platform. And okay, fair enough. And then the project we were so lucky to win a local or a Danish Arne prize given by the Union of Architects. And that's kind of, then we were kind of on a roll. And a couple of months ago, it won the Rosa Baba, the International Landscape Award in Barcelona. And as of, is it a week or 2 weeks ago, we actually got shortlisted for the Mies van der Rohe. And so from 400, even not 600, but from 400 to 40, so that's something. And it sort of reminds me of that we should keep being not reflective on action or on design, but being in design. And that's what it's a very famous professor, social scientist called Donald Schoen. I don't know if you know him. He was professor at the MIT. But he has this notion of being a reflective practitioner. And that's where you sort of reflect in action. And that is definitely what we are trying to do every day, to reflect in action, being a collective of experts that are able to sort of do design, reflect, organize, go ahead as we go. Yeah, and this is a small movie about the project. A fun fact is that it's actually these two slabs or these two long housing blocks. It's their area, it's their common ground, but they were never. They didn't like each other, and they never used the space. So here the idea was, of course, to take care of the water, but also to make it like a common ground for people to meet and enjoy. And you saw the pictures before. I mean, that was an immediate success for the people who lives there. Yeah. And these swales, or these, they of course contain water and remediates the water, slowing down the process. But they also, when it's dry, they're also a space for microclimate, for a smaller gathering, and it's used on an everyday basis. So off to another project, a very big project and a very recent project. It's in the North Harbor of Copenhagen. It's 30 hectares. It was a competition that we won at around after summer. And 15 years ago, this was not land, it was sea. And it's an amazing scale of the project. It's kind of in an aspect of terraforming, because 150 trucks of 20 tons of soil is coming to the site every day. So there's like a green arrow to the clean soil, a red arrow to the poisoned soil. And the park is, thank God, gonna be on the clean soil. But here, again, we look into it. Our proposal, it's in the very, very beginning, are looking into what is already there. Nature does find and take habitat in this area. So it's where we connect nature and nature positive biodiversity, but also with designing as little as possible and potentially make a park for a park in a generation. I don't think Copenhagen has had these type of parks. It doesn't have a coastal park like this, but it's quite amazing. I mean, just see the scale of it. I mean, I get, blown away on it. Our design has some key assets. It has the stub, where you are elevated to plus 24 meters and get a view over Copenhagen. It has the oar, it's called as ear, which has west-turned beaches and a lagoon and small islands. So this is kind of the interventions that we do by looking at the site and understanding what is at stake. And here you see the competition proposal. But it's just the beginning. I mean, we all know that working in public space, working with design is in all phases. So how do we inform the design and how do we act on it? Then off to England. And how am I have 15 minutes left. Okay. In England, we've worked since 2018. And the mayor, the City of London, have a lot of regulations, but one of the regulations that we really love is like the BNG, so biodiversity net gain. And it says that if you should get building permit or transformation or densification permit in the city, then you should prove that you leave the site 10% more biodiverse as it is. And that entitles people, clients, to actually go on site, because you cannot improve that it's 10% more if you don't know what's already there. So that's like a true, you could say a legacy, I would say, where landscape architecture really sort of can bring asset into urban planning. And this BNG is now a nationwide regulation in the UK. And we are part of the team who just got planning approval, actually, on Earl's Court. I think it's one of the most expensive sites in Europe, at least, I think, in the top 5. But here we are leading that process and the design on the landscape and the public realm. And how we work is, some of it is regulatory, the urban greening factor, the biodiversity net gain, and the drainage about rainwater, how to take that into the development of Earl's Court. But then there's also, I mean, the principles that are not really known, but we have in the KPIs of the development of Earl's Court, about the tree canopy cover, the access to planting, also this 5-minute city or the 330, 300, getting access to it, having view to it from your window, and then the tree planting, the number of trees, etc. So all these KPIs are evaluated by Lee, and we all know that urban planning in this scale also changes over time. The footprint of the buildings is only 40% of the entire land, so there's quite a substantial, there's also, rails, etc., so there's quite a substantial amount of spaces to take care of. But Lee ensures and also informs what does the changes mean, and then you can do like this, or then you need more green roof, or you need to plant more trees. So the KPIs are followed all the way. Then to Canada, Quayside. Does any one of you know Quayside? No? Okay. Well, there's a book about it called Sideways. It's about this specific site. The city that Google couldn't buy. They tried to do the Smart City Lab, but they didn't manage to do it. You can read the book if you want. But the citizens simply said, we don't want to be surveyed. We don't know what this data will do to us, to be monitored. What type of garbage do I put into the bin? When do I go to sleep? All these, I can't imagine whatever that they would be surveying. But I can remember that smart city was definitely a theme, a hybrid theme of city planning and urban planning in some years ago. But in Toronto, the city simply decided to go towards more nature and city nature. Quayside is based actually where there was a lake. So it's also about understanding the time depth of this site. I mean, the soil, the growth medium, what is already there, how are the flows, you see the ravines. This is like a map that is more than 200 years ago. So it's also about time depth and understanding how to heal the land, you could say, because it's still there, And the city of Toronto has a long time biodiversity strategy that you also need to meet. Paris has the same. It even has a mayor for biodiversity and green spaces just underneath the Lord Mayor in Paris. So, I mean, they understand, they cherish these ravines. So how Quayside is connected to the old town, to the ravine, the West Don. Michael van Valkenburg actually they just finalized this opening of the Don River. And we are actually working also on this one that changed name under a theme called Growing Streets. It's not called Villas anymore, it's called Åkerminishing. And if you can say that and close your eyes, then I would be more than surprised. I really trained to say that word for a long time. But this is how we connect it, and the design principles, looking into the microclimate, what's the flow of water, what's the flow of wind and sun, how should it experience, how should we connect people, how is the scale, and of course the topography and the terrain. And we are lead landscape architects, but also planners on this. This is a building from David Adjaye and the roofs. So really taking the full sort of spectrum of how to include green into the future of quayside. And here you have the roof garden. Sir David Adjaye has done this building, but how to connect, but also how to make both biodiversity, but also the biomassing of this site develop. So then off to UAE, and a project that definitely sort of got scaled, you could say. It's a pilot. It's a first project. It's called Al-Fay. It's a 3-hectare big park where we only introduce biotopes of native species. And this is year 1. We also have the nickname of calling it the coolest place in town. Al-Fay actually means the shaded park or the shade. It's a public accessible park. It's based on our hands-on flora that we sort of mapped out. What's the native species of this region? It's not only palm trees and etc. But what's the native? The national tree is the gaff tree, and this is the site before. The way we work, the design principles of this is about dust mitigation, about lowering the temperature, about attracting local species of birds, biodiversity, flora, fauna, remediating both soil and regulating the water. Here, water is scarcity, of course. So that was kind of the design principles of making these ecosystem services and the biotopes of native species thrive. I don't know if you know Abu Dhabi, but I can definitely recommend to go there because Abu Dhabi differs very much from Dubai. It has the natural mangroves where you can take a small kayak and kayak around. So it has a whole different, you could say, nature legacy, but also nature present But this mega city, to sort of introduce, instead of business as usual, where you use a lot of water, you have like an image on, we want more palm trees, and then we want grass lawns, as they have in the West, to actually putting theory into use, reducing the water use, and the 2023 data is that water is reduced from 50 to 75% because the systems actually work. It grows immensely fast. You can almost hear and listen that the trees are growing. The canopies, the first time I was there, the canopies wasn't covering the path, but the next time I went there, I think it was like 10 months after, they were like touching each other in the branches. It grows 5 to 6 times faster than in Europe. So here people are enjoying, staying outside, and this is like the first year of the site. And it's also about, again, this reflective practitioner, understanding the full service, going into the plant nurseries. How do they grow plants? Where do we buy trees? How do we put them into the urban environment? So this is my business partner, Rasmus Astrup, finding and selecting trees for Al-Fay. And here you see like the difference and the edge of this park. And it looks like it's been there forever almost, no? It's not like this is like maybe 3 years old. This project made DMT, they are called, so that's like the infrastructure and public space. It's not a municipality, but it is the same as the municipality. They wanted us to do a lot more of these parks. So we did 104 neighborhood parks. We didn't, bathe in gold according to these parks, but it was definitely something where we internally learned a lot by scaling this. Can you imagine just project managing it? I'm not going to go into that. I don't have time for that. But that was kind of amazing. And working in UAE and working in Abu Dhabi also allows us for evolving our knowledge, evolving our expertise. Here you have Nico again. He's our biologist that is a super nerd on insects. He loves insects. I mean, he freezes in the freezer, he talks about it, and here he's like collecting equipment for a field study in the UAE. And I mean, it's amazing, no? What they actually find. Here you have the five-striped palm squirrel, not native to the region. It's from Asia, mainly India, but it's growing in population. So it's one of the field studies or field trips that he did. You have the Arabian green bee eater. You have that is native, and what a beauty. A thung. It's called a thung beetle member. We don't know what the species is. So that was a little fast. No? Okay. Okay. That was the big screen going out. So when, and I mean, this was like, so Nico was at home and together with Anna, who's like our bat expert, and they were able to do this shopping list for the client that provided this amount of equipment for them to do their field study. And I have never tried to have a client in Europe that actually allows this. And we are still a nature-based design studio. So, but it's again to explore and also to connect the dots and look into how we can both risk minimize but also value maximize the natural environment or the space for life. Yeah, and going back to the big screen, here you have the bat detector. So that's Anna Douglas, our bat detector. And look at that. I mean, if I could get this kind of image for breakfast, I mean, working as a leader, having this kind of, light in the eyes of people that I work together with, that's kind of that's my honey spot. That's where I get a lot of my energy on an everyday life, on an everyday basis. Yeah, and here we sort of look at trees. We take some field studies from water basins, to explore, but also to share and do another design legend, you could say, into our design, understanding and respecting. But I mean, the mere action of actually going on site, either if it's Earl's Court or if it's a place in Abu Dhabi, it actually makes you sort of relate to what is already there. And I think we as architects should do that much more. I think architecture at large is very Excel-based, so we should sort of cherish that. And I'm not only talking about landscape architecture, I'm talking about architecture in general as a profession. I'm struggling a little with the clicker. So this is my last. Oh, I'm on time. I have 1 minute. Great. This is my last image. Now I'm moving to this side. Maybe you can see it. I can see it on here. But it's just to say that we do have, as a profession, quite an opportunity in front of us. 3% of Earth's land is occupied by cities. This is not our numbers, it's all sourced. 75% of natural resources are consumed in cities. And 29% of threatened or near threatened species are impacted by the built environment and infrastructure. And then the opportunity, I mean, just building-wise, and it needs urban space and infrastructure. 50% of the buildings that will exist in 2050 has not yet been built. That's an opportunity. But we need to do it different. We need to do it so much different. And the way that SLA works with this is, of course, nature-based design, but always try to look into what's the life that is already there. How can we prevent mental diseases? I mean, we all know this. We all know this. By going into nature, it simply helps us being more happy. But we have like also a mental, I mean, the young people of Denmark are feeling worse and worse. And we know that this is directly correlated from research, empirical data, etc. Climate is still more extreme. We adapt, we microclimate, and then mitigate. Economic, yes, of course, it's economic viable. We simply need to do the equation differently. And aesthetic, just to dwell a little bit on the aesthetics, it's not on the philosophical part of aesthetic, but it's more into natural science, where it sort of that's where nature in cities really are connecting with that we are also living species and we are dependent on nature. And that's where it's much more about the synesthesia, so like the overlap between all your senses, not only your visual, but how you feel, like standing in the middle of a forest or walking and seeing a bird that sort of, or a series of birds. That's the type of aesthetics that we include into the nature-based solutions. And then the ecosystem services, we divide them into utility values and amenity values. Yeah, I don't want to, I mean, I already told you about this, but that's, I mean, definitely an opportunity to connect people with nature. And the values are both utilities and amenities. Yeah, and thank you. By the green spot.
Yeah.
Maybe I was moving.
For the best lighting. Sometimes you can see me finding this green spot. That's I don't want to have the projection on my face, so that's why people are trying to find it on the floor. Yeah. Thank you very much for your lecture, and thank you for some very interesting insights. Thank you for attending the event, and thank you for first question on Slido. As I mentioned, you have a chance to be part of this discussion. So if you would like to ask Mette any questions, you can do it here. In camp, you can raise your hand and my colleagues will bring you a microphone. And if you are watching the stream on our website or Facebook, welcome to camp, and you can ask questions via Slido. So you can use the website slido.com, and if you will use hashtag Urban Talks, you'll be able to ask questions. There is a first question, so it works, and we can continue. I just wanted to mention that this event is held in collaboration with Center for Central European Architecture, MOBA, and thank you for that. And we're really happy that we have amazing guests like you here in camp. But we had a chance to meet in person before Christmas in Copenhagen, which was really nice meeting you there and discussing your work. And that's the reason why I have some questions about topics that weren't in the presentation, but were really interesting for me. So I will ask about them too. But I will start with the question that is on Slido, because it's straightforward, about the maintenance. You mentioned the maintenance of the High Line, you mentioned the maintenance of the student dorms there, and there is a question about the roundabout, because this is the one of the projects that were trending in Czech Republic, because we are in the situation where we wish to have projects like this, the extensive greenery and being ready for the stormwater management, etc., etc. I'm still trying to do the right project here and be able to do it in Prague in series, not just one example and be proud of it, but make them everywhere, because we have a lot of pavements here, a lot of problems with stormwater, etc. So this is the project that we are interested in here in Prague. And there is a question about the maintenance, about the money, and about the gardeners, about the management plan. How projects like this work in the situation of Copenhagen?
Well, the city of Copenhagen has around 1,000 people working with maintenance of the city. And they were aware of that St. Kjelds and Bryggervangen, with all these trees, that maintenance had to change. So we did a walk with them. we actually had a funny fact about St. Kitts and Bryggervangen is that the pH value of the soil after planting the trees and after inauguration was too low. And then we asked our internal horticulturist, and he said, no, don't change the soil. That's way too expensive. What we do is that we mature the soil by shoveling in pine shells. And after 3 weeks, the soil pH value was matured to sort of plant the understory. So, and this is not rocket science, but it's something that we tend to forget, or I didn't know it before the horticulturists did it, and even the project managers and the city of Copenhagen. But it's still kind of, and that it also relates to maintenance. I mean, we do very big parks. I am aware that I showed you some of the projects where we really push the urban nature level to a certain extent. We also do all these paved projects, don't worry. But St. Kitts and Bryggervangen, they were aware in the city of Copenhagen, so they actually, found people that would like to change their way of maintaining. And then we sort of had like this common gathering with them, walked around the site, looked at the site, and then again you begin to relate and you actually begin to feel for the site. And the maintenance costs are not lower. It's not like, okay, then you save a lot of money on maintenance. No, not at all. But the maintenance is different.
Yeah, because in Czech Republic or in Prague, for people from Prague, it's very important to have a greenery. But sometimes we have a greenery that is just a result of low maintenance. Yeah, we just don't maintain the street, and now we have a greenery there.
Exactly.
And people are like,
it's wild.
it's a park actually. It's a garden. No, it's not a garden. It's just low maintenance.
Yeah.
But that's our relationship to the.
But that's funny because we are also, sometimes clients say to us, you do this wild nature in cities. We don't like that. It looks really bad. But then sometimes you can actually sort of, if they are a little bit open to it, you can actually talk with them about it and actually sort of, it's a change in perspective. And we should keep changing our clients and end users and even ourselves in perspective. Don't do as you always do. I mean, it is also in the end a little bit repetitive and a little bit boring.
Yeah, because you mentioned the High Line, and we talked about
I love the High
before.
Line.
And
if we were about to do the High Line, we would say yes, we can do it for free.
I mentioned that I've been there, and I'm watching the High Line, and I was like, okay, this is too good. It's not possible. It's too good. But first impression is similar to the dorms from Amagerbro, because it's these student dorms. It's quite. It's not that famous project. Or the building, the whole campus is not that famous in meaning of Copenhagen. But when you go there, it's really nice. And the first impression is there. But how you maintain something like that? Because for me, it's something like a concrete canyon, and you add some greenery there. What you have to do to keep it in a way that it's on the pictures? What you have to do for it? Because it's something. Sometimes it looks like a wild greenery there, and it maybe won't fit anywhere, everywhere. But what you have to do exactly on that project, in this case, what you have to do for it to keep it working, keep it alive?
That project is definitely cheap in maintenance because it's 1 or twice a year that you cut it. That's it. It is.
Okay, I want it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's cheap. I like it.
Yeah.
There are another questions. Great. But I will ask you. Here? Yeah, there is another one. There's one question. I will ask you, and I will read the questions on Slido. Welcome to camp.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
I'm back here. So first of all, thank you for the great and inspirational talk. I'm thinking about the data that you showed at the end, that 50% of the buildings that will exist in 2050 are not yet built. And considering the current demographic trends, we see, I guess, most of the biggest drivers of this increase in buildings are not in the northern hemisphere. So maybe the biggest drivers considering population growth are in Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. How do you see that the concepts and the projects that you've mentioned would need to be adapted to the reality of the global South, in quotes?
Wow, that's a big question. I wish I could answer. But my point about the data that is UNEP's data, it's not our data, is that we simply don't have the resources, the natural resources to do as we do now. We need to change it. We need to transform more. But I don't have like the answer to your question. What do you think is the answer?
I'm originally from Brazil, and I guess I have also more questions than answers, but we have places that are so densely populated that I honestly don't see the physical space to implement some of these nature-based solutions, at least not within these densely populated areas. I've seen some people talking about changing construction materials. So where possible, try to shift from concrete and going back to wood. But I like that solution, but I'm not sure if it's scalable.
All right.
I have more questions than answers, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there were another question. Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. I would like to ask about the relationship of architecture and landscape architecture, because you showed us some examples of buildings where you kind of added greenery, sometimes later, sometimes in the design. But do you also have some examples when you actually started cooperating with some architects and merging the landscape architecture and architecture in the concept phase? Or do you think it's even possible? How do you approach to this collaboration with architects in general?
That's a good question. I mean, when I started with SLA, I think in 2011, I think around 90% of what we did at that time, we were not that big, but at that time was like a sub-consultant to a building architect. And that has, I mean, from my point of view, I'm also trained a building architect or an urban planner. To see that landscape architecture, you know, the buildings are maybe 95 of a total sum of money, and it deviates a little bit, and then all the money for the trees that was planned to be planted goes away, etc. To see that the process of landscaping was always, you know, depriving or deviating from the initial thought, that really made us as a collective say, well, we can't do that. I mean, we cannot promise end users that this is the type of project that we get a permit to do, and then in the end it's kind of, you know, the steel of construction or whatever deviates a little bit, and then because the division between landscape, sum of money. So that made us in the beginning say, well, we need to have a fixed, it can't be very small, but we need to have a fixed sum of money for the landscape. And then actually we sort of shifted away from that, but it's not only us being in charge of that, it's also because the client at large are demanding what we do. I mean, is that an answer?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Yeah. It differs also a lot from, I mean, I think sometimes when you see a render of a project, a winning proposal, and then the building, when it's inaugurated, it's the same image as the render. That's where landscape architecture is also deviating a lot, because it's actually, you cannot, and also it's something that we talk about in SLA a lot, is that we need to do design in every phase. So that's also referring back to being a reflective practitioner that reflect in action and actually empower design decisions to happen even in a detailed design when you are on construction side. And it's also where we go back to saying there is no I, there's always a we. So that's so much more stronger when you are on the construction side and the constructioner casted it like on a version of a drawing that is maybe 6 versions old and it's completely wrong. It gives you some kind of liability and safety about saying we have to sort of look into that and we'll come back. So the power of the collective, the power of we, like in Sesame Club. That's what I believe in.
Thank you. The question in the front. Thank you. Welcome.
It's a real pleasure to get to hear from you after sitting with you all day. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
No, I have a question about expertise. So it's interesting to see the projects. It's mostly northern climates, and then the UAE comes into play. And there's a sense of a sort of global approach, of a sort of human approach to nature-based design. And the expertise that you put forward zooms down to the biologist, the insect, the details, all the data that's very down. And I guess I want to ask about the other scale of expertise, which goes up and deals with the planning and the governance of these kind of projects across scales. And you mentioned it a little bit when you talk about the mayor having a biodiversity mayor, sub-mayor,
Yeah.
deputy mayor, but more sort of where is the expertise that allows for a common approach and a shared governance of this approach of your version of landscape design?
Yeah, that's a very good question, of course. But half, or at least 40% of our revenue is in urban planning. But it's standing on the shoulders of knowing how to implement and design. And we kind of say we will open a long park in Toronto next year, or end of this year, beginning of next year. And that's where we really understand a city. So that's why we have the key markets, because a landscape architect have rather small fees. I mean, we are 130 people, and I think we have 160 active projects as we speak. So just take that into the equation. We don't do an opera for 5 years with like a team of 40 people. We don't have those type of contracts, not yet. But that's where we, again, sort of look into cities and look into clients where they are demanding, but also responding to landscape-led planning. And that's also why we see a growing market in the UK, is because we actually that Earl's Court has planning approval. We do projects in Copenhagen. We've worked with social housing area as lead planner. So I wouldn't even say like lead landscape planner, but as lead planner for 8 years, right into construction of the terrain, of understanding how. But there's still so much to gain understanding-wise. So if we were, applying for doing a new neighborhood as lead planners in Denmark, they would say, sorry, you need to have an architect with you. But that's a shift it's a shift that we are really trying to sort of push, and that's where the UK has this regulation, and where Canada, at least in Canada as such, but Toronto really has these type of push or pull towards that. They also have, First Nations. We work together with First Nation designers, and imagine the time depth of understanding over time, and it's really rewarding as a design studio to be able to be part of processes like that. And it's applicable in many places, I can say. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the Nordhavn.
Okay.
The first, I want to mention the City Dune, the project of SEB Bank.
Yeah.
We have created the public space in front of the, between the buildings of the headquarters of SEB, which is the founding stone of the project around the railway corridor in Copenhagen. And I like that project because I've been walking there and I was like, okay, this is good. And after that, I found out it's your project. So, like, okay.
It's a roof garden.
It is good, it's approved. And I really like it. It's imitating a city dune. It's imitating a nature, kind of. And I'm interested in the process of imitating a nature because you showed us the Nordhavn, you creating the city of Copenhagen, creating the new island, something that was not there, but now in the middle of the sea there will be a new island. And it's supposed to look like an island, supposed to look like a nature, the part of it. What's the process of recreating or creating a new nature in the meaning of this is nature that we wish to create there, but it should also it should be a working nature, like animals should believe us it's nature. It should work. What's the process of creating something new that in future maybe looks like something that was there
Forever.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think that SEB Bank doesn't, that's really like one of our cornerstone projects, and I haven't shown our cornerstone projects, I've only shown recent projects. But SEB Bank is also a part of our expertise is to security regulate in the public space. We also do the government area in Oslo, in the city center, where you have like certain parameters of perimeter securing the site, a government area like that. You know about the government and the terrible event that happened some years ago in that. No, never mind. Now I'm circling. Nordhavnsparken. What is it that you're asking?
About the process.
One line.
The process of imitating nature.
We don't imitate nature. That's why I can't get my head around how I should answer. We don't imitate nature. We study nature. And then we learn from nature. And then we put that into our design. So we are designers. We are not like a forestry company. We are designers. It's simply a different design legend. Nordhavnsparken, for example, the program is that a third of this coastal park should be specific habitat for a certain black dotted frog. Can you imagine? I mean, even a city demanding that, and the frogs are already there, and I'm just like, are there really like that many frogs for like 11 hectares? And they're just like, no, but we will move them. They can swim up to 6 kilometers. It's just like, okay, wow. But that to have that specific species and the ecosystems around it, it has like even sometimes I'm asked, called by clients, I know that your biologists are headed to this site. Can you please ensure that this type of species are not, breeding at the site? Just like, no. Sorry, we cannot do that. But that's, again, you understand what I mean. I mean, it's a different design. And then, of course, the soil, the growth medium, the terrain. I mean, as a landscape architect, you always work with light and darkness, the growth medium, the paving, and the plants. That's kind of our core penthouse.
Yeah, you mentioned before that it's not a work of science, the thinking about the soil, for example, when you mentioned that in case of the roundabout.
Yeah.
But it's also not a common sense. It's not something that everyone knows, not something that every landscape architect knows.
No.
Which part of the world is a leader in that meaning of landscape architecture, of this understanding nature, studying nature, applying these things that they find out. Who is the leader right now? Which city, which country, which studio?
Yeah. Toronto definitely has a strong urge towards that approach to developing their city. And that's like a common denominator, you could say. Copenhagen to some extent, but we are often asked, but there's not room for all this nature in the city. And I think the roundabout and the housing street is actually a quite good example, that you still have the same amount of parking lots, the same turning radius, but you were able to take 2/3 of the paved area away. So that's why we are also data collectors, because we want, I mean, we know in the end it's like economy that rules the world, no? Sorry to say, but that you all know this. I mean, that's what we need to sort of fact base and own the data in order for doing more of what we do. That goes for the whole profession, I think.
There's another question. Yes, in front, okay. Yeah. You have 2 questions. First row and the second row.
WHR. Good evening. I'm George Gebert. I'm architect. So it's fantastic what we heard here. And we see that you live in a different mindset. That you actually have clients who care about the environment. And I wonder if there is enough people who will take this to their heart and think how we change Prague in this direction. Because we have very much opportunities here. There will be big build up, where there's actually no space, because for nature needs always space. And the planning here leaves practically no space because it's so dense and congested that will be a real masterpiece to put some nature into it. And so I'm not talking much to you as to the people who are in charge here, some there are, to take something of this into their heart, because we have here so many experts and never anything happened. So thank you very much. And I'm very grateful to and excited about what I've seen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Prague is a really beautiful city, I have to say. I mean, the time depth, I was in Prague as a student, and then I was so fortunate to be invited by Seamoba to be part of this jury, which I really enjoyed and I learned a lot. But this weekend to walk around in Prague and see how the time depth of history is so present. I mean, would you ever do a city like that? I mean, we should also learn from that, learn from the past and how to sort of transform with all of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
to get inspired by the old of the results, beauty of the existing old town. And the landscape is so fantastic. Yeah? I say, where is this to have a castle and green hill on the right and the green hill on the left? And
Yeah.
this is just a small part of the city, because where you stand on a riverbank, but when you move to the suburbs, it's very different. Sorry, say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There is a question behind you. Thank you. Welcome.
Dominika Kričková er arkitekt, og jeg synes, Nordhavn er en smukt og dynamisk kvarter, og min spørgsmål er, what were the biggest challenges in designing a public space in such dynamically developing area? Thank you.
As where? Sorry.
What were the biggest challenges in designing a public space in such a dynamically developing area?
Is it a specific area? No. Just like...
No, like the Nordør.
Ah,
you
the biggest challenges? Well, we won the competition, and we haven't even signed a contract yet. So the biggest challenges are to come, I think. But I mean, this is like really a citizen-driven. So there's a whole series of dialogues in Nordør where the program sort of stands on, and it will be in dialogue with the citizens in the future of developing that park. The biggest challenge of landscape architecture is that if we don't do it, I mean, we need to do more of it. But we need to be respectful about it, and we need to sort of think about buildings and public space as contemplating each other instead of, being in a hierarchy. It's really, there's a lot to gain in thinking in the contemplation between indoor and outdoor. For people, for nature, flora, fauna, for future extreme weather events. I mean, Central Europe was like completely drenched a little bit more than half a year ago. No, a year and a year ago. So all of a sudden, Vienna was like wanting us to come, and I was just like, what? Okay, we can do that. But that's a very paved city. So we need to sort of change our way of creating public realm, of creating infrastructure, because there's a lot of benefits. But also, like the starting premises, like Bispeparken and Grønningen, the one with the movie, where it's almost, the design is almost like Kalaha. Do you remember that game? Where you have the small pearls, and then it's a very old game. That project, we were actually, we used 1,000 hours in our studio before we did a design. And that's not very often that we can get a client and a public client to actually pay for 1,000 hours before they see a design. So, I mean, it's also about, taking the position of actually including end users, including client into a journey where it unfolds. I know that it's easier said than done, for sure. But I think that as a profession, and that goes both with architects and landscape architects, etc., we have so much value to propose for the future. And we also have a huge societal responsibility to make it better. But we also have the tools, but we need to sort of be aware on it. And act on it. Yeah.
Okay. There's another question. Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for inspiring projects, not just in this presentation, but basically when I visit some of them, it's always so great. And I have so many pictures of them on my Instagram. I wanted to ask, you talked about...
Tag us.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned ant expert and bat expert, and what are the professionals that you work with on normal projects? How do you choose them? And can you give us like a sneak peek into actually the project team, and how do you work with that? Because it seems it's a lot of people and a lot of like particular people. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it differs a little. We have geographer, we have had an anthropologist, we actually had two, but we had a super hard time making our clients pay for it. So then we developed a service where we actually work with external experts, because it takes a team and it matures. I mean, the biologists, in the beginning, they were not billable, so we couldn't invoice them. So we had we had to do it in order as sort of an investment for moving forward. And then it's really about the culture in the studio to share knowledge between us, and also being aware of the approach and the process of the design. Yeah, so right now we have a philosopher, we have a geographer, we have like 5 biologists, we have maybe 10 plant specialists, but we have one of our biologists is, in England, she's British, they have like 4 levels of being a bad expert. The old empire, yeah. And she just finalized, she's just in the midst of finalizing your top expertise. But it's also, in order for us to attract a person like her with this type of expertise, it's also to put her into an interdisciplinary where she's, learns about the overlapping of different disciplines instead of thinking in silos. I don't know if that makes sense. But then we have urban planners. I mean, landscape architects, we do have people from so many different types of schools, from being very horticulturist to being like design-oriented at the Royal Academy, and then we have 20 nationalities, which also is kind of nurturing into how different cultures' perspective work with this type of design. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question right next to you. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. Do you work with local experts when, let's say, you're in a project in UAE, let's say it's different environment, it's more, it's something that you don't have experience so much with. So are you
We always work with local expertise, and that's where, getting back to the time span, but also the amount of investment in order to be locally implementing projects in a market, then you need to sort of need to pile up the projects, and you need to also tighten the relationship and the team with local expertise, or with it could be an engineer, the client. Yeah.
I was interested in a thing that I mentioned, that you became CEO in 2011.
Yeah.
And that was the time when you had like 30 people in the studio.
Yeah.
And now it's 130.
Yeah.
And what changed in the approach to the client when you became CEO? Now you are SLA, so you're like, okay, we're good.
Like personally for me?
For company, for studio, because now you can say we have these beautiful projects. We are SLA. You should listen to us because we know. But years ago you were not that famous, and you had to find a way how to convince them to work with you. What was the approach to the client? How did you convince them to believe that your approach is the right one? This is the question that I would like to, ask to help young architects that would like to begin with their own approach, their own studio, for example. What would be your advice? What changed? How we did it?
What I said, young and new starters, they should really do their best to actually do a project that they bring into the real world. That's the best learning. Prototyping enables you to fail so you can succeed sooner, to sort of get your projects out in the world. And maybe even do smaller pilots, but also And I know that's easier said than done. But I mean, as a profession, you can say, all right, we do all these competitions, we do all this work for free, we do for less money, all these type of, we can sit there and cry about that. But the only ones that can actually change it is like the collective power of the profession.
Thank you very much. Mette Skjold.
Thank you.
was the long one, yeah? You were good. Yeah. That's good. Thank you very much for amazing questions. Thank you for visiting camp again after Christmas, and I'm looking forward to meet you soon. So follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook to know what's going on in camp. And as I mentioned, next week there's a new exhibition called Devade, which will be focused on architecture of 90s here in Czechoslovakia and Czech Republic. So see you here in camp.